Now we head down the road a couple of miles to the High Desert Museum, and what a treat this was. Someone once told me that museums are not only a place where we get educated and awed, but that they're a place where we can learn from our mistakes in the past and make better decisions in the future. And that's very true. Today, we do just that. We get an education, see where we could do better today, and have some fun as we do it. Our guide, Heidi, who's the Director of Communications, gives us a tour. She takes us through the Old West, some modern art, a functioning sawmill used by the original settlers, and we get to see some really cute critters.
We have 3 temporary galleries, so in other words, we have rotating exhibits. This is a new one that's going to be up through November called Lair. Stefan Hendy created this exclusively for the High Desert Museum. He essentially calls himself a sculptor with light, but he really creates these immersive experiences.
Got security cameras on me, they're probably wondering, this guy's got to go.
He said he was inspired by the high desert and some of the challenges it's facing around wildfire.
Wow, okay.
I think that's one thing that's unique about the High Desert Museum is it's not exclusively an art museum or exclusively science or history. It actually takes art and science and history and cultures and weaves them all together to tell this story of a place. So you might encounter something that's pretty contemporary, like Lair, and then I'm going to take you on a journey through the 19th century. So this is our Spirit of the West exhibit. It's one of our permanent exhibits at the museum. And it is one of the hallmarks of the museum in that it's very immersive. There's not much text to look at. There's not a lot of objects and cases. Instead, it takes you into a scene and puts you in place. And the curator who created this exhibit, he really wanted it to look lived in. He wanted people to feel like the people who lived in these tents, the fur traders and trappers, were going to be back at any moment and to feel like they're a part of this place.
You can see you go into a different world and your curiosity is sparked. I'm over here looking at that. I'm looking at that saddle and what they used to ride on. If that's how it was, it's wood with a beaver pelt on it or something.
Isn't that amazing?
That's rough. That's why they were tougher guys back then. They didn't have preparation H back then either. No fixing those hemorrhoids after riding on a cart like that.
So we just keep journeying through time.
Yeah. Levi.
Well, we're about to go into a hard rock mine. It's very prevalent in the 19th century.
This is so cool.
And it's pretty amazing, the detail in some of these exhibitions. And here's my favorite part of the Spirit of the West exhibit, the Hai Loi Mercantile. So it's a recreation of a Chinese mercantile like you would see in a mining community like John Day in the 19th century. So all of our wildlife here at the High Desert Museum could not survive on its own in the wild. The animals have either been injured or they were exposed to humans when they were very small and therefore never developed the appropriate behaviors and adaptations, maybe didn't learn to hunt, for instance.
Really?
So therefore, they've come into our care and now act as ambassadors for their species where people can learn about them. And yeah, this is a gray fox. She had an injured hip when she was found and she was clearly still quite young. She required surgery, but she's recovered quite well and has really become a fan favorite here at the museum, as you can see why.
Oh yeah, she's beautiful. Look at her, man.
That's not an everyday behavior. So we're on 135 acres here.
This is huge. I mean, is this as far as I can see all the way around, huh?
And the land was donated to the museum.
So this place that we're heading into now, is this where we're going over to the mill?
We have on site here at the museum the 1904 High Desert Ranch. Thinking back to what this area was like in 1904, the railroad had not come to Central Oregon yet. So this was one of the last areas of the lower 48 to have rail service reach it. So it was quite isolated. The Euro white settlers who came here really had a challenging existence out here in the dry, arid high desert, but they came, and we do have living history interpreters here in period dress, and they talk about how they lived.
All right, so as we're waiting to meet the crew over on the old sawmill, we found something really cool, and our cameraman knows what it is. What is this thing called?
I have no idea what it is. It's either a grub or a giant caterpillar.
Check this out. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna show you that if you're stuck out in the desert and you're thirsty and you're hungry at one time, well, what do? Can you eat this? I'm not gonna eat it. I'm gonna put it back. Check out the history of this old sawmill. We happened to be there on a day they had it running.
Again, this sawmill is about turn of the century. We think about 1897, maybe American Model 3. This would have came out of Sears and Roebuck and been shipped across the country. And Sears and Roebuck was essentially Amazon before Amazon, and somehow they didn't see Amazon coming. And what we do here is we roll these logs up and we prep them. And we've got to clear all the bark off to get all that debris off, and that also helps us see if there's anything in there that's going to hurt our blade or if that log is rotten. And now this blade is a 48-inch blade, and one thing you might notice about it is it has individual teeth. Turn of the century, as you're getting this shipped across the country on a train, if you happen to hit a rock or dull a tooth, you don't want to wait for the train to bring you another 48-inch blade. And so you would replace the teeth. There's 24 teeth on there. And so by the time you get this set up next to a water source and get the couple families that would have owned this together, you're stopping all the other chores that would have been happening on the ranch at that time or the homestead and focusing solely on this. So you would have been moving up here, all hands on deck. You would have been having horses help you move everything around. You probably would have had people even building things right with the lumber right off of the line. This is a very nice setup. We're really fortunate to have it. And we're fortunate that 120-something years later, it still runs pretty darn good.
Here it looks like what they're doing. This is their finished product of the shave, and I can only imagine how much work it was to work with something like this back then. And you heard how he explained what they were doing and how it worked and how the certain 2x they can cut out of this. And obviously here's some shavings they did out of it. But anyway, very cool. And now we meet up with Becca, the communications manager for the High Desert Museum. And she explains a little more on how things work at the museum.
Well, the museum places a great emphasis on being connected to place. And one of the really important ways that we do that is to highlight all of the beings, all of the organisms that live in this landscape. And that's from the humans to the wildlife. And I think one of the things that the museum does really well in order to do that is to capture moments of wonder and awe and discovery. So whether that happens at the sawmill or otters that really don't do anything unless it's really fun and playful, or birds of prey that just command the skies as predators. And those types of things are ways that connect visitors to this content. As opposed to just reading it on a wall, this museum places great priority on having that come to life in front of you in unexpected ways. And that's what this museum has always been about.
You have to make the High Desert Museum a stop on your next visit to the Bend area. So much to see, so much to do, so much to explore.